Welcome to Coffee and Commercial, your source for positive, caffeinated information, inspiration, and motivation. We are here back in the studio with myself and my business partner, Mr. Carlos Asensio, and our special guest today, Dr. Keanon Alderson from Cal Baptist University from the Family Business Center. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So I had the chance to go and tour Cal Baptist University and attend one of the events due to my other family business that I have, which is Mil-Spec Magnetics. And so we got to see a great turnout for the event that you have. Can you give us a description of the events that you guys put on and what the meaning behind those events are?
Absolutely. So the mission of the Family Business Center at Cal Baptist is to be a resource to the massive quantity of family businesses that there are in the region and indeed everywhere. The vast majority of small businesses are owned by families. In fact, 1/3 of the Fortune 500, 1/3 of the S&P 500 is either family owned or family controlled. In the local area, in fact, Cal Baptist is from Riverside, so in Riverside, San Bernardino, Ontario, that area, it's 45% of all of the businesses are owned by families. And in fact, that particular area has more family-owned firms than anywhere else. So The need exists to be a resource, a knowledgeable resource, and provide education, other helpful tips, techniques, tools that can help these families succeed and pass on from one generation to the next that hard-earned wealth, and of course, increase employment for the local communities as well.
And what do you define a family business as?
That's a good question. And that's a great question because there's such a variety. There's actually 34 different definitions of what it is to be a family-owned business, right? And it's usually 2 or more people related by blood or marriage. They have an ownership interest in it. They have a big enough ownership interest to control the company. And then the last thing on the most common definition is the intention to pass it on to the next generation. So that is a pretty, when you take that last one into consideration, that sort of eliminates just spouse-based businesses. So that's where we get this wide variety of that it could be 80% of businesses around the world, or it could be 45% as it is in the Riverside, San Bernardino, Ontario metropolitan area.
A question for you, based on today's society, have you noticed that the generational wealth from the families that are being passed on from one family to another, are you seeing a decline in that sector? Because I know I've seen it with some of our clients where I just don't understand the dynamics of why they don't want to continue that, that income for generations to come. But, I'm assuming that you probably come across that a lot, right?
Come across it. That is for sure. So I'm a college professor. I'm a management professor, right? So I've taught millennials. I'm now teaching Gen Z, right? And there's differences between those 2 generations, right? There's an old adage in family business called shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. So the first generation worked really, really hard, and they were the entrepreneur. They founded the business, and they did what it took, went through all obstacles to make that business a success. The second generation was born. They see mom and dad working hard. They come alongside and work hard. Oftentimes didn't really have much of a choice, like, hop in the truck, we're going to go to work, right? That's what happened to me. And then the third generation, though, they've been born, the company is successful, and they may not need to go into the junkyard business. They may go study music or be a poet or do whatever. So they don't necessarily have to go join the family business. So that's one instance. So it's a large variety of reasons why that third generation curse sometimes happens.
Yeah, I just think that sometimes it's probably more based on social media, because now you have a lot of those kids that want to become influencers, where they don't want to work. They just want to become influencers, while the family, the grandparents, or whoever started the business side of it, it's like they'll just sit there and just collect.
That's an interesting aspect of it, because there is that little bit of conflict between the generations, So that's an interesting aspect. You're right. The younger generations, they tend to want to create an app and have passive income.
Yep.
But you got to work hard first to be able to do the passive income opportunities.
Correct.
What have you seen be the differentiator for businesses that have had success in the third generation? What are some indicators that you've seen in your experience?
By far, I would have to use the term governance. So many of us are familiar with the term corporate governance, right? So a board of directors, oversight over the business, right? The top management team, they provide governance for the corporation. Well, in family business, we have a term called family governance, and there are numerous tools that help family firms succeed. And one increases communication. That's just having a family meeting. It's as simple as going out to breakfast or lunch and just talking and improving communication. The next one that raises the level of professionalism is the family council, and everyone gets a vote. And even though dad or the original founder may still have a lot of the stock still and controls the company, everyone gets a vote. And hopefully, just maybe, it might cause him to pause. And, if everyone's voting against him, right? So, and then the next step for professionalizing a family firm is a written family constitution. That's been exceptionally beneficial. It's a written document. It's oftentimes 30 pages long. The entire family sits down and writes it. It's a code of ethics. It's their mission, vision, values, which are big differentiators in families. And then it's, questions like, what does it take to enter the family firm? What does it take to get fired from the family firm? What does it take to sell your stock? Because you can't really sell the stock out on the open market. It's closed, right? So all those hard and sticky issues get decided up front, so that when we're faced with an emotional issue, everyone's agreed to it already. They know the process. And those things have really been shown to professionalize a firm and make it last longer. So we see some of these governance tools used in the late stages of the second generation and the third generation stages. Another one is board of advisors. If you're a corporation, you need to have a board of directors, right? In a large corporation, that board of directors has liability, they have control, they have hiring and firing power over the CEO.
Yep.
But in a family that owns it 100% themselves, they don't need a board of directors for the most part, right? California law says they have to. It's usually mom and dad, right? And they go to Cheesecake Factory,
that's right,
for their meetings, right? But a board of advisors is extremely helpful, and it helps a family that started their business and everyone knows the same stuff that everyone else knows, and there's this insular thinking. And so a board of advisors is a group of professionals from the outside that are successful, that don't have ties to the family, they don't have a bias, they're not connected to the family firm at all, they're not a customer, they're not a supplier. And so they just provide honest feedback, and it's wise to listen to those people. You don't have to do what they say, but it would be wise to listen to them.
It's almost like if they're mediators, in other words, right? Kind of like in a sense.
And it's also a great way to, if a family has a succession issue where they have maybe three really great people that they're looking to possibly pass on the torch to the next generation, which one do we choose, right? That's a difficult decision for mom and dad to make. So that board of advisors can, form a subcommittee and pare that down a little bit.
That's where I think it kills the family dynamic, because then the kids are going to be like, oh, he's your favorite now, or she's your favorite while you're choosing them,
You're going to disappoint
But that's
some people. Yeah.
But I think that has to be a discussion that's had, because I think for family businesses, and me coming from a family business myself, there is this understanding of an assumed communication between the family members, that there's this assumed knowledge that you know what's going to happen and you think you know what's going to happen. But when it comes down to someone passing away or these certain life challenges occurring, then you really understand we weren't on the same page. We thought we knew. I thought you knew you were taking over. You thought I knew I was taking over. And that becomes a who has the responsibility. So I think those are critical discussions to have.
Absolutely.
But they're difficult discussions to have, because, when you're talking about a family business that has a legacy of, let's say, 1, 2, 3 generations, there's a lot of history, a lot of investment, a lot of time. And so I think really going after setting things up the right way can eliminate a lot of headache, a lot of family drama. And it's better to have the discussion while everyone is of the right mind, in good health, and everything's on one accord, to approach it in that sense.
Absolutely. It's a scary scenario. The worst case scenario is something happens to the incumbent generation, an accident, a heart attack, a death, and then the next generation is not prepared. And in fact, about 76% of all family firms that went bankrupt did so because of a failed succession. And that's something that we need to do a better job at, and we need to prevent. And we can do that in the Constitution. That's one of the things that we write about in the Constitution, is what is the process for succession? And it is a process, not a one-time event.
Right.
To do succession correctly takes about 5 years, ideally.
Oh, wow.
Can you kind of give us a bit of your background and how you got into business, and how'd you get into wanting to do the Family Business Center?
Sure. Let's see. My dad was a salesperson, and so I liked marketing. I liked sales. I liked business because of the stories that he would tell. And then one time when I was about 16 years old, he was asking me what did I want to do. And I said, I think I'm going to be a truck driver. And he said, oh, I thought you'd work for me. What would I be doing? Sales. You'd be good at it. I said, all right. And so that was my career planning. So we started a family business. We had a vitamin company. It made it to the second gen. And we did it for 17 years. And I still miss it today. We sold out in, 1990. And I still miss it. I miss the fast decision making. I really do. So when I did, then I went to GlaxoSmithKline, the large pharmaceutical company, and did my MBA, did my doctorate work in family business decision making, and I research family firms now. It's sort of like laying down on the psychiatrist's couch. Mm-hmm. I consult with family firms. I research family firms. I publish. I write. And then, of course, now I'm the director of the Family Business Center, where I help family firms, in a more larger way.
Fantastic. And what do you see from your perspective, all of the businesses that are falling under the category of a family business, what ratio of them do you see that actually own their commercial real estate?
That's hard for me to, it depends on their size. Mm-hmm. It's hard. I think the best answer is it depends. I'll answer it like an economist will.
There you go.
It depends, right? If it's a small business, they tend not to own their real estate. They tend to lease. But if it's a multi-generational firm, if it's a larger dollar amount in sales, annual sales a year, they tend to own their own real estate. And I was talking to my banker a little while ago, and he mentioned a statistic, and also in his experience and my experience, that we've oftentimes seen families, when they sell their family business, they tend to make more money on the real estate and the sale of their building than they do the actual sale of the business. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think it probably has to do with a lot of times family-owned businesses that have longevity. They're usually trying to do tax savings as when they're reporting of their income.
Yes.
And so they'll pay out, good salaries to the family members and take different deductions, minimize that. So from a business sales side, there's not a whole lot there as far as the business value is concerned.
Exactly.
But that real estate is there, and that's been paid off over generations.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that is an interesting issue. It's a great way for the incumbent generation to retire as well without having to burden the younger generation with the sale of the family business directly and burden them with millions of dollars worth of debt. Instead, if mom and dad say own the real estate, they can just have the rent paid to them and work out their retirement that way. That's one easy way of using real estate to help the estate planning.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that in today's society, where we've noticed and we've seen it when we come across certain clients where sometimes they're not that well educated of the options that and how they can grow their generation wealth, for the next generation to come, right? Or their grandkids, their great grandkids. Like we have the listing in LA, it's a family owned property. The father came to this country, built the locations that they have in LA, and they just decided it was probably time to sell. But we basically we kind of dissected and looked at all the information to see what's best for them, where sometimes a lot of realtors or commercial agents are going to do what's best for us, right? So we had to dissect all the information to where, like, okay, if you guys sell the building, or you guys can lease it, then your grandkids and their kids can, have that money coming in, but it'd still be worth a lot more, especially with the rental income. But as a family of 9 siblings, which it was my first time encountering an actual meeting with the trust.
Yes.
Because I've had situations where you have, the one who decides, and then you have 4 siblings. Whatever she or he says goes. They're not going to take them into accountability. So for me, witnessing that, I was able to sit down with all family members and their grandkids to vote to whether they sell or whether they lease, which for me, I was like, wow, this is a united family.
Right.
But they were a second generation. So they all decided to sell, but I was trying to keep it, generation wealth. But, what we do is that we always try to give value to our clients, in regards to the same setup that you have for your business, which, you guys create generation wealth for the families, But I think that for us, we're just the messengers where we go out, educate our clients, give them the options, but, it's going to be their decision at the end of the day, whether they want to stop making money or continue to make money.
Interesting point you make about that second generation voting. That's what we see in a second generation family business. The first generation, that's that entrepreneurial founder, that's that risk taker.
Yep.
They oftentimes, and mistakenly so, oftentimes have this authoritarian decision-making process or authoritarian leadership style, right? So
Drivers.
They're the driver of the business. It's successful because of what they did, and by golly, I'm right. Right. And then you get into the second generation, which could be, 3, 4, 5, 9 siblings. Right. And how do you make a decision with 9 people involved? Well, the only way to do it with that many people involved is the democratic process. Right. You have to vote. Right.
Correct.
And the same thing with the third generation as well. They vote. So that decision making happens when there's more people involved, when they're older, more successful. That's a form of good family governance.
Correct. Yeah.
And we have a client also that has a paper production business out in San Bernardino. And so, we were able to meet with them. They bought one commercial building with us, and we're helping them look for another space to expand into. But we had a meeting because there was an opportunity for them to buy another company that made cups and straws and bags. What was interesting for me is you had the first generation, the father who started the business. You had the second generation, the son, who is in the business. During that meeting, he allowed the son to take control of the meeting and do the talking with the customer, because you could tell he had already invested into his son learning that business.
Yes.
And that bond seemed to be very strong between father and son, where he was able to be comfortable with whatever the son decided because he knew he's already invested enough into that. And so I think that's a really strong connection. The bond and pass down of wisdom from generation to generation really is a big indicator of the long-term success of that business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can bring it back to values, right? It's one of the differentiating factors. I mean, even, non-family firms, they have values, but for a family has a certain set of values that is passed down from grandma and grandpa to, father and son, father and daughter, and it's those family values that engenders trust among the family members. In fact, there's some family business theories that say that a family business can make more money than a non-family business can because of that increased trust. The fact that dad could send out his son and do things on his own, he doesn't need a layer of management and that overhead that management would bring along, right? When you have family members working there, you trust them. Yep. And so that is a competitive advantage. Many studies show that family firms can beat their non-family competitors.
Or it's like, let's use In-N-Out for an example.
Mm-hmm.
In-N-Out is actually a really good example, because for them it's like they built it, with the strength of the first generation, the parents, the grandfather, and for them it's like they just kept it. The kids, and then now their grandkids, and again, I mean, you've got big companies wanting to buy them out, but they're like, no. She mentioned that there was an interview where they asked her, like, why wouldn't you sell? She's like, my grandfather's not here, but in spirit, he will be pissed off if I sell it.
Right?
Yeah, but she's doing
that's
good.
Her identity.
Yeah,
She's
that's her
doing
identity.
well.
Yeah.
Many people were slightly worried that we're talking about Lindsay Snyder here. Third generation. They were worried that she would create a menu like McDonald's has and franchise it and expand overnight nationwide like Five Guys did, right? But she's done it extremely similar to her grandfather. Very slow growth, very conservative. And that's another thing about the second generation. They're extremely conservative because they have the first generation that may be retiring, right, that needs income. And then they have the third generation below them coming up, starting to work in the business or going to college, and they need to take care of their household issues and things there. So the second generation stuck in the middle, they tend not to like debt. They tend not to borrow at the bank, and they don't want the ship going down on their watch. So
correct.
Interesting. But Lindsay Snyder's doing a great job at In-N-Out in managing that growth of that great company and not putting that secret menu on the menu officially.
Yep,
correct.
That's a huge important area for them.
Yeah, you never know why animal fries is not on the menu. Okay? You have to ask for it by name.
It's like you got to know the secret menu, right?
Exactly. And
now I'm hungry.
and I found out the other day there's more things that we haven't even heard of that's on that secret menu.
Exactly.
So if you were going to get greedy, you just list it all on a menu and have a menu the size of McDonald's.
She just keeps it simple.
Yeah, keeps it simple. So,
what do you see as the downside to a family business?
When a family business is healthy, they can beat the pants off of a non-family firm, right? Quick decision making, high trust. They have the same values, so they have the same goals. They have the same objectives, right? Everyone's on the same page. They can beat the pants off a non-family firm. But when they're not healthy, we've all seen and heard horror stories, right? When they're not healthy, they oftentimes have conflict, and it's usually inter-sibling rivalry. It's not so much conflict between the children and mom and dad. There's a little bit there, but they work through it. The major dysfunctional conflict oftentimes happens between siblings that just can't get along. And these long boiling, issues that happened when they were kids at home comes boiling up to the surface when they're 40 years old working together still. So that's a problem, and that that is a big problem. The conflict happens at family firms, and you have to manage through it. And that's why the family council is such a good idea. And we actually put into the family constitution the decision-making process and the conflict management process that can help these firms, move on. Communication sometimes between family members can be poor. People say, just do it because I said so, and no one understands the reason why, and then they don't support it. So there needs to be increased communication. Let's see what else. So decision making can be spotty depending if they're healthy or not, right? Long-term planning, because as you mentioned, they tend not to think about succession. Who wants to think of their own demise, right?
Yeah.
There's this hard-charging entrepreneur, and he doesn't want to think about being put out to pasture or life forever in a rocking chair on the front porch. They can't imagine seeing themselves there. So they tend to just kick that can farther down the road, and that's a real problem for succession. In fact, the statistics on succession are pretty dismal. About 30% of family firms have a successful succession from the first gen to the second gen, and then it goes down to 10 to 15% from the second gen to the third, and then a really dismal 4% from the second gen to the third. I'm sorry, third gen to the fourth. Third to the fourth. Yeah. So, and we can improve those odds. We can improve those chances by using those tools that I mentioned, the effective family governance and professionalizing the family firm. Sometimes even hiring a non-family executive to run the company. We still own the family business. It's profitable. We don't want to sell it. But if we need that kind of executive manpower, then let's hire somebody that can run this business and take it to the next level, and we'll sit on the board, and that'll be our participation.
I think for families that's a smart move, especially for that next generation that doesn't want to, actually control or run a business. Then you can have someone that's going to dedicate themselves in running it, and then you can just sit back and capitalize on the income that's coming in.
Right. Good rule of thumb for that scenario is, if you've got several kids that are coming up, but they're not old enough yet or not experienced enough yet and not seasoned enough yet possibly, or you just don't feel comfortable, what the incumbent generation can do is do that non-family manager. And they tend to hire someone who's, let's just say, near retirement. So they don't hang around. So they don't have designs on taking over the company, right? And which just maybe gives the family 5 more years or so to develop those the next generation underneath.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Think about. And I think also looking at some of the advantages of family business is something that usually a multi-generational family business that has been done successfully, they're less likely to want to throw in the towel. And I think they'll go through an amazing amount of hardship to keep things going because of the legacy that they're carrying. I know a lot of the family firms we deal with, our goal with how we run our commercial real estate business is really to provide value, to give people tools that they can use to expand their businesses, giving them loan options. A lot of times we're dealing with a lot of companies now that weren't aware of the ERC credits or the other, triple P funding that was available from the federal government, things that were able to help them sustain during the recession. And I feel like one advantage for family firms is that there is that desire to continue. It's, hey, grandpa started this, and I don't want to be the one that drops the ball because we went through a difficult stretch. So it's more like we're going to do whatever we can do to get through this stretch of time, and we're not going to throw in the towel because we have not just the current generation writing, but the history of what the previous generations laid down.
Absolutely. The legacy is vitally important. It's one of the first things that a multi-generational family thinks of is it risky? Is it going to cause bad publicity and harm grandma and grandpa's legacy? If it is, then we're not doing it. And that happens in a millisecond. So there's this concept called the socio-emotional wealth concept or SEW approach. And this explains why a family-owned business that maybe is worth, let's say, $10 million, gets a buyout offer for $20 million, and they turn it down. It explains that any other business you would take, at business school, we teach them to, that's an appropriate offer, take it and run, right? Yep. But a family would look that gift horse in the mouth and say, no, this is our legacy here. We want to pass this on to our children. This is grandma and grandpa's work. We're just stewards of this business, and we're going to pass it on, and we're going to take care of it, and we're going to have it grow, and we're going to have it succeed and have success, and we're going to pass it on. We're not going to take the money and run.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating difference between a family-owned legacy business like that and just a non-family business.
Yeah, and I think that's a great value that you're providing the tools at the Family Business Center for these family businesses to kind of codify and formalize what it is to have a successful family firm with the succession plan and really having those things in place. What type of resources do you guys provide at the Family Business Center for people to really take advantage of?
Sure. The first thing that we offer is a family business assessment. It's a 45-minute survey where very easily they can answer questions of some of the issues that I know tend to trip up family firms. And it's a qualitative survey, so you get all of the family members filling out this survey, and it doesn't take too long to arrive at a diagnosis or a symptom for what ails that particular family firm and what can they do to improve. So that's one thing that we offer is this family business assessment, and then we can go from there and give them the resources that they would need. Maybe they need a family counsel, maybe they need a constitution, maybe they need another professional. And so we have a team of sponsors at the Family Business Center. So, you have real estate, commercial real estate experience, right? So you're going to be involved. And then we have a certified financial planner. We have an insurance broker. We have an exit planning advisor who's a certified exit planning advisor to help family firms that are on their way out. And we have a CPA involved. We have a bank involved. So just about any problem a family business is going to face, we have the tools that can help them and the resources that can help them. And then, of course, just the community of being with a room full of other family business owners and hearing from them, I had that same issue. This is what we did, right? That's very, very helpful because a family business owner oftentimes feels alone. Yep. They get in the car on their way home from work and they turn on the business radio. No one's talking about the issues that they're having at their family business. And they go home and turn on the stock channel or the business channel. No one's talking about their issues, So
and those are conversations that you wouldn't even hear about, right?
Correct.
And I think for what you guys are doing, it's awesome because again, you guys are kind of waking up the generations right now, for the second, the third, the fourth generation of what to look for.
Right.
And how to look at a brighter future.
Right. Exactly. Another resource that we have available to family-owned businesses is our peer groups. So we have tremendous interest in starting a family business CEO peer group for that incumbent generation. Mm-hmm. And then the one that was next up on the survey that we did was the next generation. Because they have different challenges than the incumbent generation faces, right? What's fascinating is when you break those two groups up, the incumbent generation will say something like, "Oh, my kids, they're so irresponsible. They're not stepping up to the plate and doing, I don't want to give them any responsibility," right? And then the next generation, they're complaining about grandma and grandpa, or they're complaining about their mom and dad. They won't give me anything to do. They won't let me try things out. How am I supposed to advance? How am I supposed to make decisions if I don't, get out there and try anything? So, they want to. So you bring those two groups together and get them talking and things like that. And again, communication is super vitally important for a family firm.
And I think that for family businesses, when you see the trouble, it goes back to the communication because that's what I've noticed even when we do transactions that we're helping our clients with commercial real estate and you have these trust and, all these family members involved. And when you see the dynamics, when they're all together and in how they're interpreting the information, you can see right away that there's an issue with communication.
Absolutely. It's very common.
Yeah,
It's
very
very common.
common.
We've dealt with brothers. Okay, we've dealt with husband and wife. Then we've dealt with father and son.
Yep.
And so we've kind of seen a wide spectrum of different types of businesses. But the one thing I would say that really helps is the ones that we've done. Everyone knows their role, and even though it may not be written down, which I think every firm should go through that exercise, of really writing down who's doing what.
Right.
The ones that have been successful and we've been able to help, each one knew what their role was, and I think that alleviated a lot of stress and drama because each one wasn't concerned about stepping on the other's toes. They already knew what they were supposed to do. And one last question as we wrap things up. When you deal with family firms where you have, let's say, family members that aren't involved in the business, but still have an ownership stake, how do you deal with that? And what are your recommendations dealing with that?
I see red flags coming.
That is a sticky wicket. You know what's interesting is, let's just say mom and dad, right? And they have, maybe 3 kids. And so when mom and dad pass away, their estate plan is to be fair to all those children, right? So it's going to be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 to each one of their children. But then when you take a look at the third generation, there's one person may have one child, one person may have 10, one person may have 5, and now we've got an imbalance there, right? So fair does not mean equal.
Yeah.
So sometimes that gets really complicated. There's lots of different scenarios and lots of different answers. But one thing to do is, if you don't want to be in business, if you're a family business member and you're the only one that's working there, and you have 2 siblings that are not working there, they just want to vote for their dividends. The family members that are not working there, they don't understand the need to invest, let's say, $20 million in new machinery to stay competitive in the marketplace, right? So they'll vote no because that would be a disruption in their dividends. And so you don't want to be partners with that. So the best way to do is, in the estate planning scenario, is to, the one person that works at the business gets the business, and then the other 2 get the real estate and the stocks and bonds and all the other investments that mom and dad made, and split it up fairly that way. Because otherwise you could have some serious conflict at the family business if you have those family members that are not contributing and they don't have the same goals.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad that we were able to talk about that. And so, can you tell us how people can get connected to the Family Business Center and about the monthly meetings that you have?
Yes. So we have meetings basically on a monthly basis. We have Zoom meetings in between our bi-monthly breakfast meetings that are held on the main campus at California Baptist in Riverside. And anyone that's interested can send me an email, kalderson@calbaptist.edu, and I'd be happy to talk with them about that. And our ideal target market is a family business that has multiple family members working in it, because those are the ones that are going to experience, if they're not having problems yet, it's at some point in time, they're going to have a conflict problem or a communication problem, or need professional governance, or need some of the tools and resources that we can provide. As a family business advisor, they tend to call me for 2 reasons. One is conflict, and the second one is they have an emergency succession, which they didn't plan for, which is very, very scary. So oftentimes family doesn't know what they don't know. So it's good to get involved. They would learn a lot. I invite all the family businesses out there just to come to one meeting and see if it's right for you. See if you learn from these families, learn from the research and the data that we present, and the studies and articles that we have on best practices.
Awesome. Well, as they say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
That's right.
So
Very true.
having a plan as a family business is critical to your success. And so we want to thank you for being a part of this podcast today. And we look forward to collaborating with you in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great information that you shared with us. And it just opens up a lot of possibilities and what to plan for, especially for families that we're servicing too,
Appreciate that. Thanks for inviting me, Chris and Carlos.